What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Off the Couch Boxing. I'm your host, Reckless Rex Ruger, along with my best friend, the Alexis Arguello puppet. You might know him as AKA El Flaco Explosivo. Need I say more? The man is a living legend. And we are back again with another phenomenal episode. And finally, we're getting a little estrogen in here. Finally, we got some female blood, and that's important, at least in the boxing. It should be anyway. Melissa, hi.
Hey, how are you?
It is so good to have you on here, and I was just telling my audience before I came on here, my little preamble, man, and it's nice to have a little estrogen on a mostly testosterone-fueled show. I got to admit, I'm looking at all my past episodes, and there's only been one woman in there, the great Lisa McClellan, the sister of Gerald McClellan, and just got done finalizing an interview for next weekend with Jackie Callan, so I'm excited about that. So slowly but surely, the women are starting to get some love. I'm working on it. My wife always says, why don't you have more women on here?
Well, Jackie Callan is amazing, and she's being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Very, very, very well deserved. Oh, she is such a supporter. It's amazing.
So because a lot of, as I said, because a lot of men pop up on this show, what got you into boxing? Like why the delving into boxing? You're obviously a boxing historian. I see from your Facebook page and articles on you that you do a lot of training at Gleason's gym, do a lot of your best writing at Gleason's gym.
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually say that I have written part of 2 books at Gleason's gym. Actually, it started when I was a little kid. I grew up in the era of Muhammad Ali and fighters like that. So I always had a fascination with boxing. And I was around 12 years old, and my uncle taught my brother and I, the old 1-2. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. I can turn a jab. But I kind of lacked the imagination to realize that I could actually do it myself.
Right.
And it took me till my early 40s till I finally walked into Gleason's gym and said, man, I gotta check this out. And as part of that journey into boxing, which I had always followed, one of my favorite fights in the 70s was, aside from the trilogy with Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, was the first fight between Kenny Norton and Muhammad Ali. That to me was boxing, stay up late at night listening to Howard Cosell. Anyway, fast forward all those years, and I continued to watch boxing, in the 80s, in the era of the welterweights and the middleweights, and used to watch Friday night fights on Friday nights on ESPN. But for me, the journey into boxing also led me to realize that there was this whole world of women's boxing that nobody ever knew about. Nobody ever talked about.
Sadly,
there was Layla Ali. She was like as if there was no other boxer except Layla Ali. And I kind of said, wow, there's more to this. I see it in the gym all around me. I see the women who come and train when I train in the morning. I used to come to like 7 in the morning. And there'd be people like Alicia Ashley winning, WBC belts in the greatest fights that nobody ever heard of. And I really wanted to correct that. So I started my girl boxing blog in 2010 and started to write stories about the women around me, and then expanded my knowledge. And I also went back to school at around that time and got a master's degree in liberal studies. And for my thesis, I wrote about women's boxing and the idea of the gender binary of, okay, women should only do this, men should only do this. So what about boxing? And boxing, as I discovered, kind of has this ebb and flow where it's accepted at some times in history, at other times it's not. And only to learn that women were boxing 300 years ago. How crazy is that?
But do you think there is a stigma with that, though? Do you think that stigma is being lifted now? Because we are starting to see, whether you like the fights or not, the quote unquote gimmick fights, when you see a Jake Paul card. But a woman like Amanda Serrano is getting paid on those cards and getting a very high profile.
And the real deal, her fight against Katie Taylor 2 years ago at Madison Square Garden. I mean, that just changed the world, if you will, for women's boxing.
Yeah.
They sold out the arena. It was the main card, the main event. And even coming into that fight, people were saying to Eddie Hearn, who's the head of matchroom boxing in UK, they were saying, "Are you crazy? You think you're gonna be able to sell any tickets at Madison Square Garden with two women?" On the head of the card, I think it was Bob Arum, said, "I'm sorry, but that's like, saying that you're going to watch, some women's little soccer game in England against,
Right.
so
Yeah.
Nelson's like, well, hello, they beat the pants out of you that night when Shakur
Yeah.
Stevenson was fighting. Nobody wanted to watch that. They sold out the Garden. They had a $1.5 million views, which was extraordinary on a pay-per-view. It wasn't even pay-per-view, on streaming. So it really did make sense. And then, Bob Arum himself had to eat his own words, because 6 months later in the UK, in October, there was an all-female card on Sky Sports and ESPN. Top ranks, Michaela Mayer was in the mix.
Yeah.
And there was Bob Arum, like, yes, let's go. All-female card. Let's put it on ESPN. And they ended up with 2 million views. So over 2 million views, and sold out the O2 Arena, which is, kind of London's equivalent to a Madison Square Garden. So yes, there's a lot that's happening in women's boxing among a sort of elite level of female fighters, many of whom came up through the amateurs, were in the Olympics. A woman like Claressa Shields, who's the only American boxer, male or female, to do back-to-back gold medals. She's, has a really high visibility, commanding good money for fights. Amanda Serrano, you mentioned. Then there's fighters like Heather Hardy, who were plugging away all that time, but is starting to finally get some recognition, and was fought on a fight card with Amanda Serrano this summer, where she had, for the first time in her life, a real payday. And she's 42 years old. First time she had a real payday. First time she could spend a month actually in camp without having to work. I mean, that's amazing.
That's when you've made it, yeah. And of course, I can say, being a guy married for 25 years with 2 daughters, you never want to cross a woman. I mean, come on, women fighting is sometimes they can give you a hell of a better fight than you mentioned the Shakur Stevenson fight. I'll take a couple of women fighting over his last couple of performances.
Absolutely. And the thing with women at this level, they are willing to move down and up in weight.
Sure.
They will, because they want the best fighting the best. And that's what it's about, is best fighting best, and getting opportunity. And the truth is, like, women, even at $1 million, they make, Mayweather's bar bill on a Friday night, right? I mean,
right.
It's not real money. It was the tip money is what they earn.
Yeah.
The typical woman on a card is still earning, $800 a round, $1,000 a round.
That's not we got to do better. We got to do better with that. Yeah, boxing's got to.
And we have to do better with even for title fights, depending upon who it is, they may still only be getting $30,000, $40,000.
Yeah.
There was a fight last year when Amanda Serrano was on a card at Madison Square Garden in the Little Arena. She was the headliner with an undisputed battle, and fought Erica Cruz in a 10-2-minute round. So you figure this is 20 minutes of fighting. They never stopped. They threw between them over 1,900 punches. Can you imagine that in a men's fight?
I know. That's
not going to happen.
Yeah, that's
not going to happen.
Right there. Yeah, that's bona fide action.
That's real action. There's real fighting. This was real blood. This was real will. Will to win, a will to become the undisputed champion, which Amanda Serrano, won that fight through sheer grit and determination against.
Now, when you're writing in Gleason's gym, I got to ask, though, is it the whole ambiance? Is it the sounds, the smell? Does all that stuff?
Yes, part of it.
You're a creative person?
Yeah, I mean, I do too, kind of writing. I mean, I write. I'm an author. I have a history of women's boxing, which covers the history of the sport over the last 300 years.
Which Ring magazine hailed as the Bible of women's boxing. The Bible. Yeah.
The Bible of women's boxing. It's still I'm still the only one out here with who's ever written that kind of book. And my second book, which is coming out in June, and shout out for anybody that's around wants to go to a book launch. It'll be June 15th at Gleason's Gym.
Okay.
That book is covering the period we've just been coming through from the end. What happened the day after the Olympics in London in 2012 when you had all these women, 12 women, 3 women became gold medalists.
Yeah.
3 women won silver, 3 women won bronze, 2 of whom were Americans. So what happened the day after? Well, not much.
Right.
It took another 4 years. It took till the end of the cycle of the 2016 Olympics for fighters like Claressa Shields, like Katie Taylor, Natasha Jonas in the UK, Michaela Mayer in the United States to say, okay, maybe it's time to turn pro. Maybe I will finally have the opportunities, because promoters were kind of scratching around going, they're selling out arenas. They're really good.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time. And so that Claressa Shields in her first fight for Rock Nation, which was a one-off in terms of promotion, but she could get $50,000. Most women never saw that money ever.
I know. Sad but true.
Women like Jelena Mendeja, I'm completely screwing up her name, but she's a Canadian fighter, had the featherweight title, I don't know how many years, as WBC, WBA, just all of the belts, but never, ever, ever could earn that kind of money. Right. Or a Heather Hardy, who, when she fought in 2017, or her highest payday had been around $30,000 prior to being on Serrano's card. So it really made an impact in terms of this elite level of fighters that started to command an opportunity and show up, yes, on the bottom of cards, might not even be shown, still weren't being shown on HBO. That took another year for when Cecilia Brækhus, the first woman to ever win Undisputed, and in her 25th title defense, finally shows up on HBO because they lost a fight and they needed to bump up to have another fight on their actual live stream. So.
Right. So it wasn't even purposeful. Yeah. It was just.
It wasn't even purposeful.
Yeah.
But anyway, but it did start to open up, and folks who watched it they're watching real elite fighters fight each other. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. They really know what they're doing, and often we're much better than their real counterparts, because they are fighting 10-2. So when you only have 2 minutes to prove yourself, then you are not stopping. You are fighting your entire way. I think it's Lou DiBella, who is an early supporter of women in the ring. He's been putting women on fight cards since 2006 when he started with Maureen Shea. He's even said, if boxing were being invented now, everybody would be 10-2, because this is an exciting fight. The product is really great at 10-2. And of course, now we have, with Amanda Serrano really pushing for 12-by-3, we have that, and we've always had women who fought 3-minute rounds. We've always had women who fought 12-3, but it just was sort of on the down low because the main sanctioning bodies refused to sanction it. But if a sanctioning body agrees, and if the state commission agrees, you could fight 3-minute rounds. You can fight 12 rounds. So it's just a matter of that agreement. And Layla McCarter, who's a brilliant fighter, was on everybody's top 10 pound for pound list for at least a decade. She really started that in Las Vegas in 2007, 2008. Right at the end of Layla Ali's ascendancy, she was starting to have 12-minute rounds. That's 3-minute, 12-round championship fights, but it wasn't for the major belts. It was for the smaller belts, or the women's belts, regional belts, stuff like that. Wasn't IBF, wasn't WBA, wasn't WBO, certainly wasn't WBC, who was very adamant that they won't approve a 3-minute round fight. So it's been a really interesting time if you think about where we've gone just in 10 years, from 2014 to 2024, in terms of the space for women's boxing, the conversation about women's boxing. And even though in the United States, we're in such turmoil in boxing because HBO's gone away and Showtime's gone away. Most of the streaming is from Europe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You got Matchroom is got their deal with Golden Boy. So if you want to watch Golden Boy, you watch Matchroom, and the undercard is on YouTube. So we got all this stuff going on. So the power in boxing is really confused. How to watch boxing is really confused. It is no longer a consistent product here. But even given all of that, when you put women on cards, it generates excitement, it generates fannies in the seats, and it generates eyes watching the fight. But then you've still got, like PBC, who refuses to put women on cards.
Yeah.
They did. They had them. 2016, Heather Hardy fought Shalito Vincent for an incredibly exciting WBC international title that sold out this venue in Coney Island. Errol Spence was on the head of the card, but nobody was there to see that. The entire place was the fans of Shelley and Heather. And it was really exciting. It was the first time NBC had put women on, and PBC, the PBC had the deal with them. It was streaming. It wasn't on their main broadcast, but the fact that it even was on at all was amazing. And there were additional cards at that time that PBC put women on, but now, zero. Really, since COVID, there's been nothing. Their whole deal with Showtime, they refused to put women on the card. So it's unfortunate. And, they're continuing to have fight cards. They just made a deal with Prime. They're going to have Keith Thurman on a pay-per-view. I hear it's going to be pretty expensive too.
Yeah. Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime looks like the platform where boxing is going to land, and now that Showtime has pulled the plug. So I mean, it's
but they're doing their deal with PBC. They don't know anything. What do they know about boxing?
It kind of stinks though, because you have to have an Amazon Prime subscription, but then to also kind of have to pony up pay-per-view dollars on top of that, I think leaves a bad taste in people's mouths.
It does leave a bad taste. It is $75, $74.50, something like that. And I'm sorry, but Keith Thurman, really?
Yeah, been out of the ring
for how long?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's other good fights on the card, but and then you have, all this stuff in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, and, there's boxing's in flux, and the place of women offers, in my estimation, an enormous opportunity, because you can have more fights because it's shorter time. That's the thing. When you get a 20-minute fight, that's 30 minutes is what it's costing you as a broadcaster, right? You got, the ring walk in, fight, stuff after. It's 30 minutes. You got a guy's fight, you're at 45 to 50.
Yeah.
Right? You get two women's bouts out of that, and you're not paying them anyway. It's not. I mean, women on a championship fight, especially the B side, they're making less than the junior boys.
Right.
I know this for a fact. There was a woman who was on a card for B side of an undisputed. He made, I think, $30,000, and they were asking her, that same manager for boys, to be on the B side, and they were going to give them 50. What?
I know. It's not very fair. It's not very fair. And I think some of these promotions have really got to get their head out of the proverbial ass.
Exactly.
I mean, women do add a certain element of excitement, and they have a different fight in them than the guys.
Yeah, and look, last night, in New York City, Loeffler 360, Tom Loeffler's 360 Promotions had a card at Madison Square Garden. They had Lisa Rodriguez, who's a real local hero, if you will, as a boxer. She has a great amateur pedigree. She was a Golden Gloves winner. I mean, so there's a lot of strong feeling here, and she works for NYPD. She's a cop, so she, of course, had fannies on the seats. But the fact that they put her on the card, kudos, and B, really gave her attention. They made it important. They really worked hard to get her promotion, to get her publicity, to get her interviews. And that really made an important difference. And I got to tell you, she sold a lot of tickets
Yeah.
show last night.
And I have a lot of fighters here. I have a lot of fighters on here whose opinion is very, polarizing. It's a polarizing topic as to whether people not like these Jake Paul fights. But I will give him credit though. He's doing a lot for the sport, and giving a woman like Amanda Serrano a platform to be a co-main event, especially, is really helpful.
Yeah. It's very helpful. And I'm just going to give a shout out to Tom Loeffler, though, 360 Promotions, because he's the one that got, Cecilia Brækhus on HBO not once, but twice.
Yeah.
And the second time she was the main event in the last HBO card. That's another whole discussion. But kudos to them, because they're continuing to walk the walk. And I really appreciate that. And I think it's good for the sport. It's good for the growth of the sport. It's good for opportunity. And of course, in terms of where women's boxing is, it's all shifted to the UK.
Right.
Most of the major fights are there now at this point. Americans are going over there. Jessica McCaskill, who is the former undisputed welterweight champion who defeated Cecilia Brækhus, she's consistently fighting over in the UK because that's where the fights are. That's where the opportunity is. That's where the broadcasting deals are. So,
and depending on who you ask, it always seems like boxing is in a state of being a fledgling sport. So, I mean, I don't know, like, what it would hurt at this point, to put more women on cards. I mean, certainly you want to attract that demographic. There's a tendency to be, when women see a fight on TV, to not be all that interested watching guys fight.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, again. And we saw this locally in New York, and this is why Lou DiBella kept putting women on fight cards. They sell tickets.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And in boxing, unless you're the main event, you're selling tickets.
Right. Yeah. That's what it really boils down to, the selling tickets. Now, we've dropped a lot of names here. We've mentioned Amanda Serrano, Layla Ali's name has come up. Obviously, this gets bandied about a lot. But, in your mind, and of course, this is, completely subjective, is there a GOAT in women's boxing? We always hear that GOAT term thrown around. We ask a lot of guys on here who come on. We hear a lot of Muhammad Ali. We hear a lot of Floyd Mayweather. But who is it for women? Obviously, Christy Martin has done well. Layla Ali has done well. All the names that we've mentioned,
well, they've all done well. I'm a little reluctant to say GOAT because every fighter brings something.
Right.
And it's more than just, when you think of Muhammad Ali as the GOAT, it's about him as a fighter, but it's also about him as a figure.
Agreed.
And so I think that plays into it. So if we're talking, since the mid-90s when Christy Martin and Deirdre Gogarty, I think today is the anniversary actually of their famous fight on the undercard of Mike Tyson, and did a 6-rounder that basically shook the world. And 2 weeks later, there's Christy Martin on the cover of Sports Illustrated with blood streaming down. But, she didn't have blood in that photo, but the inside cover had photos of her all bloody and pink.
Tough woman.
But very tough.
Tough as they come.
Tough as they come. So she is the reason why Layla Ali became a fighter, because she saw Christy Martin fight and said, "Oh, I can do that." Lucia Riker, who is probably was the best skilled boxer in that era of like late 90s, early aughts. Clearly the most skilled boxer. Plus she just had a natural athletic physiognomy, very muscular, but not like from lifting weights. That's just her body type. Yeah. Low body fat. She had been a kickboxer. I mean, she had a very, very explosive and brilliant career as a kickboxer before she ever came to America to box. But she was inspired by Christy Martin. So in a lot of ways, you got Christy Martin's the GOAT in the sense of she was a good boxer, and she also had galvanized. She helped create something. As a pure pound for pound boxer, would I put her at number 1? No.
Right.
But she's in that status, if you will. She's in that place.
Yeah.
She's a pioneer in that sense. Layla Ali, was she the best boxer that ever lived? No. But again, she created the space and the acceptance for women. And she she had the first pay-per-view as a main event. I mean, with Joe Frazier's daughter, Jackie Light Frazier, who was also amazing because she was in her 30s and an attorney.
Yeah, and of course, the two of them keeping the Ali Frazier rivalry going too.
Exactly, keeping that. So it was Ali Frazier 4. They had the fight, you know, at Turning Stone on the Canastota weekend for the.
I live right down the street from the Turning Stone.
Oh my God, that's
I'm
amazing.
I'm right in the backyard of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. It's about 15 minutes away. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So anyway, so they were there for that weekend. So there was all this coverage and idea and an amazing fight. Even when you watch it now, you can say, well, it's not the most skill. It doesn't matter. It was really exciting entertainment. And look, professional boxing it's entertainment.
Absolutely.
It is. At the end of the day, it's a product. And when you're selling a product, part of that is, that's why we do all these promotions. That's why you had them saying, okay, we'll do Ali Frazier 4. Why not? Put some fannies in the seats. We'll make some money. And Layla Ali, from that fight forward, became a much better boxer. And she mostly fought a lot of Europeans because those were the women that were getting the opportunity to box because they were getting the kind of support and being able to fight in larger platforms. So she did really well. And she remains a really important figure in terms of that historical arc. If you look at women now, you've got like a top three. You've got Claressa Shields, who's just an amazing fighter. And really, she's so big and so good. There's no one to touch her right now.
Right.
As a boxer. Then you've got Katie Taylor, who's, you know, sort of the pride of Ireland. And why she has that GOAT status because she, in essence, helped create even the idea that there could be women in the Olympics in 2012. She was really instrumental as an amateur in making sure that happened, in participating in a way that was much more than just being a fighter. She was completely invested in how to make that happen.
Right.
So she is very important, and as a fighter, isn't a remarkable boxer, has the skills and the will. And that's the thing with Katie Taylor is she's got this inner dog that you look at her and she's the sweetest little thing, you know. She speaks so softly and so sweet, and she gets in the ring. She's got a dog in her.
Yeah.
A serious dog. You know, her fight that she just had with Chantel Cameron really showed that element. And then you've got Amanda Serrano, who came up, you know, I think she had two or three amateur fights. She came up the hard way through New York City boxing and just had such skill and such opportunity. You know, her sister Cindy had paved the way as a boxer. She was a really important figure in the aughts as a fighter and a champion. And then Amanda sort of picked up that mantle from her, and just has incredible will, incredible skills. Probably one of the hardest hitting women ever in the history of the sport.
No question. Yeah.
And you know, her body work is really what distinguishes her as a fighter.
Yes.
Her body work is superb. It's superb.
Yeah, it's a lost art. It is. You don't see
it is a lost art.
Right. You know, you don't see you don't see it sometimes men or women.
No, neither. You don't see that. You don't see the sort of you know, like the footwork isn't there. It's those amazing skills that she inhabits, that she just exudes. You watch her, just watching her shadow boxing, you just kind of stand there in awe. Her hooks are perfect. It's that tight little spiral, you know. Just,
fundamentally sound. She is.
So fast, so beautiful, fundamentally. So you know, for me, those three combined are the GOAT, you know, of this era. They each represent something really important to the sport and its largeness, not just skills, but have really made an impact on how we think about the sport entirely.
Yeah.
So I'm very whenever I see them fighting, I was like, wow, I'm in awe.
Yeah, very well said. Now, before I let you out of here, of course, we at least have to talk about the new book. So coming out June 4th.
Coming out June 4th. It's called The Promise of Women's Boxing, a momentous new era for the sweet science. And I really dissect what happened over the last 10 years, what happened the day after the Olympics to now. I go back in the sense of I look at what I call the old gang fighters who were winning titles, who were keeping the sport going at a time when nobody cared. And
Yeah.
yet they were amazing fighters. I take a look at boxing in Argentina. I take a look at boxing in Mexico. I look at the sport in places like India and Japan, which again have had all of these amazing champions that nobody ever heard of, in the sense of, unless you're in this rarefied world of boxing, you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And then I compare that to how the Olympians have done, what impact they have had on the sport as they began to turn professional in, starting in 2017. What impact has that had? I take a look at what happened during COVID and the extreme, how it completely kind of, on the one hand, boxing died. On the other hand, boxing was reborn in a lot of ways, at least for women, because it gave them the opportunity. Those who were able to box at all during that period suddenly had opportunities to be main events and to be on these fight cards where you had the best fighting the best and being the fights of the night every time.
Yeah.
And it became really significant, and it really started to open up the idea that, wow, we really need, this is an important little product for boxing here. And it started to also open up the funding for these kinds of fights. And then I also talk about the controversies, 2 versus 3 minute rounds, issues of doping in the sport, and really look and examine at the pay equity concerns. You have a young guy who's a prospect coming up, who's with ESPN. He didn't pay for anything. That kid is in camp, paid for. His training is paid. All of he's basically earning. He's getting a stipend to live.
Right.
So he can box and be
developed. Job for him. Yeah, it's a job.
Yeah, it's a job. He's been hired to be a prospect.
Yep.
And that's great. There are no female equivalents to that. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very fine, teeny little line.
Yep.
Where that happens.
Yeah.
Everyone else, it's what's your day job? Camp is adding the extra hours to that day job.
I'm sure is. Yeah.
Delphine Persoon, who is a Belgian fighter, she is a police officer in Belgium. She wrote very famously when she was fighting Katie Taylor the first time, that she had been saving up all of her leave time so she could actually go on leave to be in camp.
That's dedication. Okay. Yeah.
It's dedication. But that's what women do.
Yeah.
Jessica McCaskill, she was undisputed. She was still working, in stock in a brokerage house, right?
Yes.
So I write about that and the significance of that and how it makes it very difficult to pursue boxing. And then I also talk about, what's the future? What are the great things, and what are the things we all really need to think about to see the continued evolution of the sport?
Well, thank God you're out there doing this. It's always great to talk to anybody who's this passionate about the sport. If people that watch our channel, no, it's not just about boxers. It's anybody that just has this kind of love and this passion, for sport that was, that we love a lot. So, I implore people to go out and, do their homework and read up on women's boxing and support it. You're certainly flying the flag for the women out there. It's been a real pleasure getting the chance to talk to you. I'm glad we got the chance to do this.
Oh, I am too. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about women in the sport.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And it was really a pleasure getting the chance to talk to you. I really appreciate it, man. And please stay in touch. And hopefully we can get together and we can do this again when you got something else going on.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Love it. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate you.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now I got to figure out how I get out of here.
Oh, I think it's leave call. And just do me a favor, send me the link and I'll broadcast it all over social media when you're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm going to get this up ASAP because I really want people to be able to see this and get it up sooner than later,
Awesome.
and help you promote the book. So
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Take care.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
There she goes, folks. That is Malissa Smith. I couldn't figure out how to get out of my own chat room there for a minute, but that is Malissa Smith. She is an author. She wrote A History of Women's Boxing, which Ring Magazine, the Bible of boxing in its own right, hailed as the Bible of women's boxing. So that is a high praise right there. So I got to say, go check that book out. And her new book comes out June 4th of this year, entitled The Promise of Women's Boxing, A Momentous New Era for the Sweet Science. Please, folks, go out and get this book, do your homework, and let's really catapult women's boxing. Boxing certainly needs that demographic. If we can get the women audience, the sport needs to do itself a service, not a disservice, and showcase women's boxing more. Certainly the women train as hard. There shouldn't be this stigma with, women's boxing and men's boxing. It should just fall under the umbrella as boxing. We've got to get past that. There still is certain stigmas, that go along with not just boxing, but a lot of sports. We see it in the WNBA. It's unfortunate then, but sometimes it's not a level playing field. And I'll just leave it at that. That was a real pleasure getting the chance to talk to Malissa. I hope you guys enjoy that. Definitely go out and purchase the book. Again, as I said, it comes out June 4th. The Promise of Women's Boxing, A Momentous New Era for the Sweet Science. She mentioned she'll be doing a book release party signing at Gleason's Gym June 15th. If you're in the area, go check that out. Thank you so much to Malissa Smith for coming on. That was a phenomenal episode. As always, follow and like us on Facebook. And be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay tapped into the best boxing conversations anywhere on the planet. Alexis Arguello agrees. That should be all you need to know. This is Rexx Ruger reminding you that if you want to be a champion, then you have to roll with the champs.